You know, employers are complaining about being ghosted. That was the other big thing they were bringing up in October about all the being ghosted. Oh no, we're being ghosted. It's like less than 10% response rate. Look at this survey we just did. Y'all have been ghosting.
No, that's what kicked this whole thing off.
Yeah, you guys are ghosting everybody, and now you're mad that like a couple people did it to you. Oh,
yeah, that's what kicked me off this whole thing in the first place. I wrote back in the middle of September, like employers getting ghosted, and then a bunch of readers were like, "Screw that! They're doing it to us." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. Oh no. So that's sort of when you entered the space, huh? Because yeah, that's it's unicorns or anything. That would be nice. I'm starting a podcast. Rounding up people to do podcasts is kind of hard, actually. I was super like everyone that called me for one. I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. Like I was just like, what time I'll be there, and then. But apparently it's not that easy. Apparently I am not.
You mean being a reporter is not just fucking around?
Yeah, you don't just walk around. Everyone's just like willing to talk to you all the time. You mean I got to work? Shit. I didn't join that no one wants to work group. You know how much work I've had to do from joining that group? It's ridiculous. Like I'm an admin. I've had to do podcasts for that. We have to have our like group triumvirates to like, decide how we're going to do things. Like the amount of work that I am doing for zero wages now in my fight to get people better wages is very fucking ironic, and it is not lost on me. But I don't mind
like
doing
a Reddit mod.
It's oh yeah.
Those Reddit mods were like complaining about having. They're like, it's real work. It's a job. It's a real job. It's the most important job on the internet. But you're not wrong. Yeah, it's tough stuff, man.
Emotional labor.
Yeah. Let's talk about your November effort. You did show me the survey beforehand, but I'm like curious, sort of like what changes you made, and like I don't know, like what was the big question? I guess that's what I'm trying to say. What was the big question that was on your mind, like when you started the survey?
So I asked questions. One of the main ones that I really am glad that I picked up was why people don't click on certain job listings, right? And that got some really good answers. And there was the way that I asked them the questions, I made it generalized so that people could put in information from as far back as 2010, so that if people wanted to share any job search for any length of time from then until now. So and of course, since mine was just me, this is submissions from people. And I'll just scroll through here real quick and we'll go over the questions the way I asked them. But I tried to do it in a way so that a lot of the stuff that didn't really apply to when it was just me, of my geographical location, the wages I was looking for, all of the things that kind of limited how useful the information I picked up was. It gave us a much broader range of information. So pick your state, the year your job search occurred. The way that I laid it out was that you could do one per year. There was much more information collected about this past couple months as opposed to previous searches from past years. As you get closer to 2021, we have more submissions than that. And then how many applications total were submitted during the indicated time frame? So how many applications total were submitted during the indicated time frame? Less than 10, 10 to 50, 50 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to 1,000, and then other, where I allowed people to put in a different range. It does not translate well into Excel and ways to manipulate the data in order to look at it easily on a chart per se. Once I go through, and I have to go through and hand organize some of this stuff, and you'll see what I mean when I go to show you some of the write-in answers. And then I sort of to transfer it into a way to make it easier to present because of the way I asked the question. But I'll be able to give a general estimate of, okay, in 2021 from our submissions, we have data collected on, and I estimated a number. It's at over 10,000 altogether between all the applicants and applications that are there. It's around 10 to 15,000, which covers a pretty broad range. And then there was a percent who responded questions. This is easy to read. That's how many responses. One of the data points that became very clear very quickly in this is that most people were responded to 0 to 10% of the time on it. So let's say out of 100 applications, you can expect a response from 1 out of 10 people, employers wise, which is pretty dismal. So that means 9 out of 10 pieces of paper you're throwing out into the void are just going into the void and never coming back. Did you attend any interviews? This was kind of a choose your own, and then there was none, no followed up with many of the applications, but I was passed over. And there was yes, and I was hired for the advertised position. Then yes, but I declined because the offering was less than advertised. I also left the checkbox for people to write in their own, and there were some interesting submissions in that that I'll show you here afterwards. Average wages sought in the applications you pursued. There was either no restrictions, meaning look for any job that was available. I didn't restrict it. Then there was up to $10 an hour, 11 to 15, 16 to 25, 25 to 50, over 50, and then other. Some people chose to put they were looking for 60,000 a year or whatever. So I left open options for if someone didn't feel like what I wrote down fit their thing, they could write their own thing. How important are wages to your search? Not important at all. It's very important, 1 through 10. How important are hours to your search? Same thing. And then how important are the benefits to your search? Same thing. Those, I'll show you the charts on those in a second. And that is, those came out, they pretty much came out as would be expected. What are the reasons you don't apply to a posting? This is where we got some really good stuff. This is the stuff that, you know what I mean? Monster can't tell why you didn't click on it. So they just can't get this information. I don't know if they do exit interviews or what. I don't know how that works really. Never had them ask me about it. So I know they've never asked me like why I didn't click on stuff. What are reasons you don't apply to a posting? The #1 choice, and it was the first one, and same thing in like real statistics. This would be a blind survey where the things were randomed every time and blah, blah, blah. You know, because that was the one that was clicked on the most. You could say, well, people just clicked that one first. Either way, misleading headline or claim. Nobody wants to apply to a place that has a misleading headline. Makes perfect sense. Ambiguity in wages offered, such as up to $16 an hour or starting at 11 to 17 based on experience. Another big one for people, me included. Sales or commission-based positions is the #1 reason people don't click on a job. That was almost everybody that had a reason they didn't click on things. That was one of the reasons, which, yeah, I don't usually apply those either. I do end up taking them when I apply to a job that turns out to be that kind of job, and then it's not. I have taken sales jobs because I don't know, after our talk, I'm good at talking to people. I'm a pretty good salesman. Drug testing. Not many people said that was the reason they don't apply to places. That's the reason I didn't apply to places a lot of the time, because I smoked weed, right? So I just be like, if I can't smoke weed, I don't want to work there. Now it doesn't matter. Must be able to lift so many pounds in non-labor intense field. And that, you know, a lot of people looking for stuff in the reception secretary area answered that's a common complaint. Like, and even in the no one wants to work group and the anti-work Reddits, that's a big thing you see out there. People are like, why do I need to lift 75 pounds for a receptionist job? Like, or it'll be a reason to, they'll need that skill. It'll say it and they'll be like, I worked at a place for 3 years. I never had to lift anything over 15 pounds, you know, and it's so that's ableist speak. So to, you know what I mean? Disabled people, me, now I have a bad back. I look at must lift up to 50 pounds. I can't really apply to a place that says I need to lift 50 pounds. My doctor says I can only lift 30. So then I'm the one screwed if I hurt my back there, because you clearly told, you know, it's all just to cover their ass, I guess. Non-inclusive language in general, you know, and you'll see this a lot in the like Craigslist style or Facebook things where, you know, people will use language that you just, especially from recently, mostly politics. If someone's talking a certain kind of politics, no liberals need to apply, shit like that. I absolutely 100% gloss over ads like that, except for the couple that were worded like that in my original experiment, because I was targeting people that spoke like that online, right? But most of the time people avoid that shit. Makes sense. And then this one here, the in your own words, what could employers do to improve response to their listings? The answer to the question that all these employers who can't find employees want to, this is why no one applies to your things. In their own words, the people have now told us. Number one answer that, you know, this is a write your own words, but pay a living wage just kept popping up. You know, it's a pretty common theme. People want to make enough money to live when they go to work now. I mean, they've always wanted that, but I guess we finally started asking for it more. We're being louder about it. I don't know. Like, people are talking about it now. And then would you like to let me email you with updates? That's standard. I'm going to be reaching out to these people separately, one by one, over the course of the next month to talk to them personally about their experiences. So then some of the charts that popped up automatically from the Google survey came out pretty cool. 22% of my respondents were from Florida. 64% of the submissions were in 2021. 60 respondents had job searches in September. So we have a lot of job searches, and try and do the math on that to figure out how many of these actually line up with the same month that I did my experiment, because I know a lot of people shared their just September data from what I saw in the thing. And I have the PDF printouts that have everything broken down per submission, and I can email that to you afterwards so you can go through it if you want. How many applications total were submitted during the time frame? So 37% submitted 50 to 250 job applications during their job search. Since the average length of job search from what I've seen was about 3 or 4 months, that makes sense. That's about 40 to 50 jobs a month. That's almost the 60 that I put in, and that's a very easy number to hit when you're doing this stuff online, because it's not like back in the day where you had to get in your car and drive to a place and fill out a piece of paper and come back and go. You know, once you get good at this stuff, like doing the online, you've got your little copy and paste file for filling in the 75 exact same fields that you're going to do all day. You know, you've got to copy your resume where all of your job history stuff is line by line in your curriculum vitae. So when they ask for a itemized job history after they've already asked you to submit your resume, you know, you got to go put that in too. Like, the first couple times it's hard, but after you've done it, you know, all day, every day for a couple of months, you get really quick at it. So the longer the job search is, the longer months. Obviously, there's a couple of submissions that were at 500. 8 people said their job search was between 500 and 1,000 submissions, you know, and that was for the longer ones, 8 or 9 months. I think one of those was an entire year's worth of searches, right? 13 people responded, said they had less than 10 submissions. So people that applied to less than 10 jobs, I believe 1 or 2 of those people even applied to less than 10 jobs and got a job, right? So we even had submissions from people who didn't experience what I experienced online, which is great, because obviously someone's out there getting jobs that they're looking for on these things. And obviously the system has to work for some people, otherwise it wouldn't be adopted. You know what I mean? Like, if it didn't work, nobody would use it. So percentage wise, there's a much bigger percentage of people following my stuff that have had negative experiences with this than positive, however. You know what I mean? So that just makes sense with what I read through the people that are participating with my stuff online now. Percent who responded, here we go. So 42.7% of job searches resulted in 0 to 10% response rates from employers, right? Like, that's insane. That's almost half. Very few. We've got 5% say that they were responded to by everyone that they applied to. But if we add these two together, that's what?
That's like, yeah, so 2/3 are getting.
Yeah. 2/3 are less than 20% response rate. And so now you look at, if you put in 1,000 applications, right? And even at the generous high end of that, you've gotten 200 responses. But still, out of those 200 responses, no jobs. You know what I mean? Like, most of these job searches, the really long ones, ended when the person, after 1,000 applications, got 1 job. So it's like, the ratio there is, you know, it's always going to be like, most people, they get that job, especially after long search, and you stop looking for a minute. You're like, okay, I'm going to try and stick this out, right? Even if you end up hating it, you stick it out a little longer, because it's better than going back to that job search until, and I think that
until you run the course. Yeah.
People stayed in jobs longer through that period, I think, until recently, because during the couple of weeks of complete shutdown, and then like here in Florida, we started opening a little earlier than other places. You know, everyone that got sent home for that shutdown was shown that they were expendable, right? When it came down to it, the job gave, sorry, got to let you guys go. I watched every restaurant that shut its door. Sorry, you guys got to go home, like, right? And they're like, okay, we're open now. You guys got to come back. And everyone's like, but I mean, do we? You know, now that everyone knows that the employers really don't care about them, you know, even it's just what anti-work Reddit's up to, like it's past 1 million Redditors now. It's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Now this is the, did you attend any interviews? Please select all that apply. Now, the 4 that I had selections for got selected like that. A lot of people wrote in their own yes or no, and then the reason behind it, so that if they didn't fall neatly into one of those categories, you can actually see why they didn't do it. Here, this guy, about 20 interviews, no job, but a few offers. The offers were just too low, right? So that whole job search, even out of their 20 interviews, they just didn't find anything that was working for them. And same with the people who've been responding to you and your, at the bottom, from the thing at the bottom of your article, this all matches up with the exact same story that you've been hearing over and over again. And then I've seen that there have been more stories, not particularly like mine, but people, similar situations, different, just ridiculous employment stories of like, why are we doing this, right? Like, the system is broken and we have to fix it. Average wages sought in the applications you pursued. So 30% of people were looking for 16 to 25 an hour. 30% of people were looking for $11 to $15 an hour. So 30% of all of these job searches happened at below what we all agree on at this point as being the bare minimum wage that people need to survive, which even at this point, we know 15 is not enough, but it's better than what anyone's really offering now. So that's crazy. 25 to 50 an hour, there's about 20% of the applications were looking in that range. Over 50 an hour, we had one person only looked at jobs that was over 50 an hour. We had one person was looking for 60,000 a year. One person, they wrote their own range in 10 to 25. They were just looking for a salary. I mean, I guess we were all kind of looking for a salary, right? But, and then about 10% of people were just like, didn't care. I will apply to any job. What do you got, right? No restrictions. They were willing to look at whatever. I'm usually willing to look at whatever.
So that's 3/4 of people didn't care if it was 25 or less. Like that's like only 25% of the people wanted more than $25.
Yeah. So that's,
and I don't even think that 60 grand was going to be about $30 an hour. So
yeah,
like,
yeah, it's a lot of this definitely falls in that range. And then what's now counterintuitive to that kind of like, but the wages are the most important things to the search, right? More than half of the people were looking for that, and the wages are the most important things to the search. And so the most important thing to them, and they were still not even looking above $25 an hour, right? Like the most important thing, and that's to me, same, I don't really look above that because I automatically just, to me, the requirements for the jobs that I see online for that type of stuff, I always see one thing that just makes me like, not like, yeah, they're not going to take me. And also like a self-worth thing too. I feel like I have skills that I should value much higher than I do. And that is why I have taken a lot of the very low paying jobs I've taken in the past. How important hours are to your search. They were pretty important to a lot of people. I see here that to a lot of people, they were pretty indifferent about what the hours were. So the hours you're working, full or part-time. So that could be taken ambiguously, but
right.
And then how important are benefits to your search? 8% said not at all. 30% said really important. And a question that I didn't get to cover in this, but that I was talking with some people about during that is that the thing that, like, if I was being offered the choice between a $20 an hour job with no benefits or an $18 an hour job that gave full benefits, I would take less per hour for the opportunity for better benefits. Like
Yeah,
that would
yeah.
absolutely factor into my decision.
Total compensation is basically how they measure that on the
Yeah.
other side.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess they do have their fancy business words for those, huh?
Well, that's how the government measures it. Like, because at the end of the day, like labor costs are.
Yeah. It's not. It's the money that you're paying your employees and how much pizza did you have to buy them, right?
Right, but the thing is, like everybody's going to use. You're using the words that a worker's. Like, what's interesting about this structure of this is like you're using the words and the language that a worker would use rather than an economist or a
Yeah.
CFO.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think
I'm not trying to fill out data points in a chart for this. I was like,
right.
because we're talking about the human aspect. Like, okay, well, why exactly don't people want this? What? Let's go to the source, guys. Like, hey, that's what worked for me. And then, okay, so one person didn't apply to places for geographic location. This one had some pretty good stuff in it, but right there, 70% of people just don't click on things that have misleading headlines or claims. 72% ambiguity in wages offered. 62% sales or commission based.
I mean, like I think I told you before, we get and I get punished for misleading headlines too. People have zero tolerance for misleading headlines.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things. Like we live in the information age, and everybody wants everything to be transparent and honest, but only one way, right? And that doesn't make any sense. Like that's if you want transparency and honesty and the ability to care what your employees are saying about you on social media, well, your employees should expect transparency and honesty and care about what you're saying on social media too. If you're saying you can't find workers McDonald's, but then you're posting these articles about record profits, bragging to your shareholders about in this new I forget the way it was exactly worded. I have it, but the way that it was worded in their shareholder minutes were now that we have basically it said now that we pay people less and have less employees and less labor costs, our profits are going higher and higher, and we've got half the staff. It's fantastic, right? And it's just so over here they're like, oh no, we can't find employees. And over here they're like, guys, we're making so much money, like we're really good at this paying people nothing thing. Yeah. Check it out.
I'll send you my story from today.
Yeah, along the same lines. Yeah, I started reading the quarter three reports and almost to the T. Every place that had these big like shows of like all the big companies, they're all record profits throughout the pandemic. Everyone that was bracing for tragic losses throughout the pandemic to their profits, each and every single sector, Florida, and especially here in Florida, like all of our industries that were supposed to have taken these big dives all showed growth over the past 2 years, and not just adjusted for COVID or inflation, just growth, just nothing slowed it down. So we took them saying that none of this economic stimulus worked is bullshit, because if it didn't work, then we would still be failing. But then B, we were never failing. The only time that anything looked bleak and was going down was when we were under complete lockdown. Everything that has happened since then, the losses of life, the refusing to wear the masks, these vaccine mandates, all the politicizing of everything, it's all just like this big circle jerk reach around between the media and the government and the people with the money. And it's like, the people that are suffering are all of us at the bottom that are like, I can't even think of a funny way to describe what it's like. It's sad. What it is it's sad. It's sad watching this circus happen repeatedly. I had the conversation with my boss the other day, my boss that I work for in Key West, and he supports me in what I'm doing, but he was feeling some kind of mood, and he's like, but what do you do? He was coming at it from the other side, and nobody ever gave me anything. I'm like, but Mike, sure, you built up a business, you built your own business, right? And then your dad called you from the Keys and he said, I'm running this really successful business down here. You should come down here and help me run that. So then you left your successful business to go run another successful business with your dad. People don't have that, man. Like, I'm really great. That worked for you, but that is not the common American spirit for most people. And he's like, but you can just go out there and do that. I'm like, but you can't just go out there and do that. I was in the foster care system in Florida as a teenager. Nobody called me to come run a successful business with them because I was their kid. Like, so, and just people don't understand their privilege across the board. Even people that sympathize, and he's one of the good employers that pays his people right and takes care of his people. But he's still in the back of his mind, still poverty is a result of laziness. And we all know that's simply not the case. Like, there's a lot of things that cause poverty, and laziness does probably cause it. And like 1% of people, sure, I'm sure there are people out there that just decide they want to do nothing and be. Most people don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, and it comes down to equivocations and privileges between the class of people who have the privileges and the class of people who do not have the privileges. And the lines that this particular situation are drawn on are not racial, and they're not political, and they're not anything. It's simply, there are people who can afford to live, and there are people who cannot afford to live. And any other separation that anyone else throws into that is all just to take focus off the fact that the people who are sucking all of this wealth from our economy into their spaceships, don't care about these people who create the wealth that built their spaceships. And there's a line somewhere down here where that happens. And the trick is that all these guys up above this line have all the guys right here convinced that they're one day going to be over here. So you know, like my boss Mike, you know, if he doesn't get to believe in the American way that like anyone could just pick themselves up by their bootstraps and build a rocket ship with money in their garage, like, you know, but that we all know that America doesn't exist anymore, except for a very few privileged couple of people that managed to work the system and come up with the right thing at the right time to fill in a gap, and then drain $200 billion out of the economy somehow. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I think there's a few ways of capturing that, but yeah, there's let's see. But yeah, some of these responses, some of these like text responses would be interesting to like.
Yeah, so I took the files of that. I made 2 of them. This is one. This is the write in your own words what employers could do different. It's all very simple stuff, and it's all stuff that we talked about. Use humans to screen, not AI. Be more transparent. Stop understaffing. Pay a thriving wage. Offer living wage. Offer livable wages. Offer living wages. Pay above the area minimum. You know, so most of them are like, hey, just pay us enough. That's all we want. Like, what can employers do different? Pay me enough to live. You know, nobody's asking for anything insane. You know, nobody wants cocaine covered unicorns or anything. That would be nice. And then the other one that I see a lot of in here is use human interactions, and same thing. And no one wants to work, and the anti-work Reddits. If you look at the posts that we see about like everyone's issues with the job search, almost to the T, are all with the algorithm, that the answer to why what happened to me, and the big excuse they kept using was these algorithms, right? The algorithms are why these applications aren't going through. But if you had humans look at resumes, that wouldn't happen, right? So a big answer here is, and it's topics come up a lot. If we had more humans in the human resources departments, then you wouldn't have all of these applicants slipping through the cracks. And then of course, when I'm talking about the things that I would really like to see is, you know, just more inclusion and you know, if people have been arrested, that shouldn't, like, all the things that disqualify you from like some of the dumbest jobs. Like I just read, and I'm super excited about it, a convicted felon is running for sheriff in Monroe County, Florida, which is Key West, where I'm from. And I think that's great, because if you want someone who knows how to deal with crimes, maybe people who have been involved with crimes might have a little more of an edge. You know what I'm saying? Like, you want someone to catch felons, put a felon in there. That's going to solve that problem right there. I thought that was pretty cool. Here we go. $10 an hour is not a livable wage. Yes, minimum wage went up, but so did rent, food, etc. Don't be cheap. You won't have such a high turnover. There's some really colorful answers in here. this one lady in particular, nurses, I believe. There's a huge nursing
Yeah,
shortage.
there's a
Hospitals
massive
need
nursing shortage.
to recognize that the nurses are burnt out. You know, they were searching for work as a nurse practitioner. It's a bit different. So that's oh, you know, I forget. I think that was one of the submissions where they put in a couple of applications and got a job too, I believe, you know, because they were going in
Long-term care too, hospitals, long-term care. There's a bunch of problems in health and nursing and stuff right now. But the pay in long-term care is way low. Like they got, and I think they got the National Guard going into New York, into Rochester, I think.
Wow.
To staff these long-term care facilities.
Well, and look at, you know, you have these people you're putting into and this is a thing, because I know people in this industry as well, and it's like, you know, you're offering $13 an hour for doing stuff that you need medical licenses for. Like what's even like the shortest certification you can get to like get any kind of nursing or license is like what, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And so you got to go to 2 years of college to make less than minimum wage some places. Like it doesn't make sense. And then we get into like the one thing over here that I just read. The amount of qualifications required for a $9 to $14 an hour job, right? That doesn't cover your things. And exactly, you see like, oh, you know, 1 to 2 years experience, you know, starting job at $11 an hour. And this is for something like they want experience or schooling. And it's like, so you want me to take, I just came out of school with like, I don't know, let's say $20,000 in college debt. And now I need to work for $10 an hour and pay rent and food to like, maybe if you like me after 2 years, you'll hire me at your starting wage, which is still a little bit higher than your barely paid intern wage. Like that all day I'm in the trenches with these guys online in the Reddits and the no one wants to work group, and there's a lot of empathy, so I get worked up talking about it now sometimes. Stop behaving as if people are disposable. Go figure. You treat people like disposable pieces of trash. They don't want to work for your company. And a common thing that I see in some of the things in here, this took me a while. I missed one there. It was very full of crap like that I have to fix. So it'll be much easier to read for you, because I got all the weird symbols out of it mostly. Actually respond to job seekers. Go figure. Clearly state the pay rate. So the top three: pay a living wage, right? Be specific, right? And respond. People want honesty, and people want to be effectively communicated with. Honestly, there's nothing that I've seen and everything that I've been doing with this since I did my experiments that doesn't absolutely 100% read any book on relationship or dating advice, and it will tell you how to better treat your employees and employers. You know what I mean? Like, this is all common human interaction stuff. People want to be treated like humans, not a number, not a robot. They don't want to be weeded out by algorithms. Don't want to be treated as disposable. Like, all of these things hit home with me. Like, more information about the position, honesty, all down the list.
Yeah, there's a few things that jump out. I mean, the funny part though is I felt a lot the way about algorithms, but like a lot of this requires having good people that are doing the interactions.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of places that I get the sense that they or like a lot of folks that talk about this stuff, I think pointed out that like humans are much more liable for bias and all these other things than a computer. Even, I mean, you have
Yes.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like there's a lot of stuff that's happening that we think is bad AI, but it's actually human beings following. I mean, there's also human algorithms, right? Like if you have a workflow, that's an algorithm. A human is executing it.
Yep.
But anyway,
Well, and that's a big problem too, right? Like, and that's the thing you're going to see. Like, even the people that get through the gauntlet that is applying to a place online, then you finally get to the interview with the person, which is tough enough to even get to an interview through that. Or let's say you actually get through to the job, and then like turns out just don't like the people, right? Like, all the time I will get to the part of interviewing with the job, or even like the second interview. First interview went great, right? And now I'm going to talk to like the second manager. Like maybe I liked the shift manager, he was cool. And then after the GM, I'm like, no, just personality conflict. Or I can't tell you how many times I just decided not to take jobs in the construction field. Yeah, it's just it's that built-in privilege that, you know, you have to recognize exists there, because there are things in my life that are easier, that I don't put as much effort into as other people have to, because of the color of my skin. I have walked out of interactions with police officers that I should have been shot for because I'm white, right? Like, I've been pulled over and let go for crimes that I was literally caught committing because I was white. Like, you know, but I recognize that. I recognize that that's the only reason I walked out of those situations without a much worse situation. Like, I'll say, yeah, that there's a drug testing one. Someone else is on team weed. This is all the, now the way it grouped these, it's a little hard to read them, but the last part of each one is where they wrote in their own thing. The first, whatever ones are all the clickables, watching all the submissions as they've come in over the past month and kind of reading them as they came. So I've been absorbing and processing this information for a month now. We're like a family. F swerve. I'm gonna be doing I'm gonna basically do what I did, because this is a more same thing with like the way I tried to keep the names of the people I applied to out. I'm gonna go through and pull any information that can identify people out of it before I submit it to any, like, I'll send you the lists of the stuff, but yeah, that's better than not.
Yeah, I mean, like, who said, you know, like, oh, you know, is there more that we can talk about this record, like this person, or like this?
Yeah, because we don't need to sully it with the person that said it, because the words speak for themselves.
Yeah, textual answer thing is interesting, and it's interesting. It maps onto, you know, other stuff we've been seeing. I think there's still interest in this space. You know,
what I'm seeing is a lot of wasted dollars in ineffective procedures, right? Like, somewhere out here in this giant job search, job market industry with Monster and Indeed and all these guys, and the amount of money that is being spent on the media for telling stories about it, and those guys, and like, there's a huge bloated economy of useless job search circle jerking going on out there, right? Which is what we've been shining this light on, and that's sort of where I'm starting with my plan to solve that problem. And this is the part where my executive dysfunction gets in the way, because I do not have the resources to just, if I had unlimited resources, I could just go and solve this problem. I believe that I can actually provide a solution to this problem that we have discovered. When we first talked, you know, and I was just first starting to deal with like the viralness, and then like it wasn't done going up yet, and then so now I'm 60 days into, like, most of my day, if it's not spent doing stuff like this with you, it's communicating with people online about this topic, or trying to wrap my head around ways to move it forward. And I've had a lot of things where people have reached out with these ideas on ways we can go this way or that way. Talking documentary and this summit thing, and like some of, you know, 9 out of 10 threads fizzle out. But the fact that this conversation is even still happening 2 months later, right, since the initial post, means that, like, what I'm doing so far is being effective in so much as, like, my online following of people that are like kind of my little cheerleading section is growing with me. The viral spiky thing is leveled out much higher than it was at the start of all this, right? Like, I have more people paying attention to what's happening with me and listening and participating. And so I get, like anything else, now I have to take this idea that I didn't have this. This isn't what I was supposed to be doing because of all this. I just was making a funny Facebook post and I was going to go back to my video. But now all of a sudden it's like I have this opportunity to use this to make maybe some change. And, you know, like, there's always that, because like we all want to believe and we've all seen the movies, like, you know, maybe the day that I wrote down like the soul of this app, and I wrote it on a piece of paper, and I haven't said the words out loud like about what's going to make it work, because every device is listening and I'm paranoid. And the minute I say it, then Amazon's going to release their version of the app tomorrow. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I wrote it down and I stuffed it in my wallet. That could be my Zuckerberg moment, or it could just be the moment where I realized I was fully crazy. I need to go back to playing video games, but you never know, right?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both always.
Yeah, and you don't know what's going to work if you don't follow through. So I had to temper my expectations with where the things were going. But now it's like there's actually like we're seeing these stories of these real changes happening in real time since this conversation started, right? Like just since we first talked, we've seen more and more places that have just been like, yep, we're raising our wage and we're paying people right, and then we're not waiting for the federal minimum to go up. The place in Florida, Pollo Tropical, right? Like it's think Pollos Hermanos from Breaking Bad without the meth, right? And it's really good fast food chicken. I grew up in my we've had them all over where I ate them all the time as a kid. They're paying everyone $15 an hour now, and like more and more places are doing this thing. More people are talking about how like it's kind of in now to take care of your employees. Like we've seen what happens when you don't. So I mean, I don't think that that's my fault. I didn't start all that, but by this conversation, you're reporting the people that are actually telling these stories out there are actually making a difference. The anti-work Reddit, the no one wants to work Reddit. We're all, by being loud enough, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. We have to continue talking about it. We can't stop talking about it. It's so easy. Like, that's the one thing. My bosses and everything, the people that were telling me last month, they're like, yeah, whatever, nobody cares. I'm like, oh, I mean, but a lot of people kind of did care, and they're still like, did you read this stuff, bro? I'm like, did you see the China article? Like, come on. Oh, I made a shirt out of the China article because that was a great quote. The not in a hurry recruitment, just mislave conclusion. That was my favorite.
Yeah, we have an interesting collection of our global distribution has some interesting results sometimes. But yeah, I think to me what it sort of reflects is like a lot of this stuff was built for another world, and like,
yep,
it wasn't really. It's not to say that it was working before that it worked before, but there's just not really a viable way for it to go back.
Right. The climate has changed. Like 10 years ago when that system was built, everybody didn't have a phone in their pocket yet. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, one of the things that I kept thinking about during your piece was like, or like when it comes to hours, the question of hours and the importance of hours and the kinds of work people are looking for. I mean, the big thing that changed is multiple job holders. A lot of people used to do a lot of work. Most people earning lower wages were stringing together several jobs.
Yep.
And people appear to be right now less willing to do that. They want one job that covers the hours and the wages that they need to live, like, which makes sense, I think.
Yeah, because the people that are willing to do for the second or third job, you don't need to be scheduled at a place now. Like the place that those jobs used to take up has been replaced with Uber and Lyft and Instacart and such, right? Because of the online shopping boom and everything. Like now that $20 or that $10 an hour, 20-hour a week McDonald's job you were doing for extra money, now you can just log into Uber, make that same money in a couple hours driving, and only do it if you want to. You don't have to participate if you don't want to, right? It's this all.
I'm not sure if that's how it counts. If it counts those or not, because I think those would count as self-employed, which would then be still a second job.
Well, that's like, what I'm saying. People are like looking for their main job to cover their everything, and then if they are picking up something to add income, they're not doing it by scheduling like themselves at 3 part-time jobs. It's if you're gonna have 3 part-time jobs, you're just gonna stay self-employed instead. Like you're not gonna
much more incremental or something. Yeah.
That's what
but it's interesting to me. But it's interesting because like
Yeah.
No, because that to me is like, I think people are wanting more. That's one thing that I keep seeing in this sort of stuff is like that people just don't want to deal with, don't want to accept having to cobble together several 2/3, worth of a job, like, cobbling together 20 hours or 30 hours here in order to get, and they're working overtime. Like they're working, they're probably working 60, 70 hours a week.
And then not getting overtime because it's split
But
up.
not eligible for overtime because all of it is, and not even getting benefits because they're not even they're not going over 30 hours, they're not benefit eligible. So they're doing all of this, they're working all this maximum overtime stuff. And like, I think that part is like, people really are not trying to go back into, like, that's one of the things that I think, one of the biggest things that I think made low wage job reliant industries tick. And then they just get and then they stopped. So
Yeah,
like that went away. Like people just stopped accepting that deal.
yeah, and then even like another big sector, a big part of the part-time sector was older retirees picking up, right, just the simple little minimum wage just for something to do throughout the day. But like, since nobody for just here in Florida, like anyone who was at any sort of risk for coronavirus, they're not going out to take those jobs now. Like the most at-risk sector of people are those people that would take those jobs. Like, right, none of them, if you are in a situation where you're on any sort of fixed income and you're an older person, right, and then all of a sudden like the cost of living is going up, but your fixed income is not. So that I don't know what the stats are on the people that are in that particular bracket, but a lot of the people online that I interact with in the No One Wants to Work group and that are falling into this area where the longest job searches with the most rejections are over 50, right? Like they were up there in age. So we've
I got a lot of those.
A lot of
those people.
a lot of ageism, a lot of ableism. Like it's people want, employers expect way more out of the employees than they're willing to give anymore. It's been this ingrained culture of grind or die, and well, everyone decided, well, I guess we'll just die. Take all of the thinking out of it for the people. That usually works the best, right? People don't like to think about things. You're like, here, you just take this and you press the green button and you go, and they're like, yes, I'll do that.
Yeah, hit go, enter this, go on.
That's why nobody wants to work for most of these places anymore. It's like, you want me to jump through 17 hoops, wait 6 weeks for you to respond to my phone call, come to an interview 2 weeks later, then 2 weeks later after that, there's another interview. Dude, I'm homeless 3 times by then. Like, found a different job. Sorry. Like and all these employers that are, don't give their information until like they talk to you on the phone, right? I applied to a place, then you call me and you're, oh, well, it's this much an hour and this and that. And then I don't know why no one shows up to the interviews. Well, if on the phone you told them it's $11 an hour and no benefits and all that, like, okay, yeah, sure, schedule me, whatever. Like, their time doesn't mean anything to you, so why should your time mean anything to them? Like, I told you you were going to be the call when the thing happened, and like, numbers wise, like, okay, everyone's like, well, you only applied 60 places. Like, all right, now here is information from across the country spanning 10,000 plus applications, and wow, look, same thing across the board. So just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean it didn't happen, guy. Like, that's the biggest argument I have on the internet now, is like, just, okay, cool, you go ahead and do what it did, and then you come back and tell me how it works differently when you did it. But like, just telling me how much better you would have done it had you done it is, I don't care. I just, sorry, bud.
Well, I mean, my big one of my big soapboxes really is just that these things are wildly unevenly distributed right now. Like, wages are like employment experiences, all this stuff. So like, just because somebody has things going really, really well for them, like, I think that if you've been talking with your statistics folks, like, you're going to have what's known as error bars, right? What's the range of possible outcomes? And I think in normal times, that range is a lot more narrow, and like, and we were very far from the normal time, so that range is much wider of what is working, and you know what's a good experience or what's a bad experience. People talking about like rent increases or wages or the price of milk, like it's all over the map. And so just
Yeah, well, that's my boss, Mike. He was going off on
yeah,
he's like, you know, if you raise the wages, you got to raise the prices and all that. I'm like, but bro, the prices have gone up for 40 years. Wages have not. So like, if the two aren't connected, and then like, and he agrees with me too. I'm like, and he's like, well, if those places aren't paying enough, then just don't go take those jobs. I'm like, exactly. That's exactly what I'm telling you we're doing. I'm like,
that's what's happening.
All of these people I'm online talking to, we're not taking those jobs, sir. I work for you because you pay me. Like, and I work for you still because you still take care of me in a fashion that I can stop working for you at the end of the day and say, I made enough doing that job. And nobody's going to go to a job where they can't say that at the end of the day anymore. It's like, they shouldn't. Good. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Good. See, we agree.
People that do the right thing don't often realize that people aren't doing the right thing.
Yeah. They're just like, what do you mean they don't? I'm like, yeah, they just don't do that. They can absolutely not do that, Mike. He's like, no, they haven't. No, they don't have to. Shit. They have to pay $7.25 because that's the federal minimum wage. Anything else is like, you know,
yeah,
that's the problem. You know, employers are complaining about.
I got the jam and make you go to work, now work, that pizza boy.